Hey, you see the Barbie movie yet?
What do you mean yet? That's how I know you high. You think I'm about to go sit there and see a Barbie movie? Hey guys, it's your girl E, born and bred in Inglewood, California, here with Native LA's inaugural episode of ING in LA, where we talk about all things one can do here in our fabulous city, whether you're a native or a transplant. Joining me today is a man who probably knows just as much, if not more than I do, about Los Angeles culture, my good friend Tony.
Hey, my name is Tony. I consider myself a community and culture centered creative, born and raised here in Los Angeles. Compton, if you want to be specific, but LA County, if you want to be inclusive. I like to study Los Angeles, just from being here, from a sociological standpoint, from lived experience with work and whatnot. I really appreciate being able to be from a place where I can talk about its culture, its lifestyle, the things that make us native Angelinos and the people who come here enjoy this place and be so intrigued by it. And we want to start this first episode talking about something that's such a integral part of LA culture, something that is near and dear to my heart. I know it's near and dear to your heart.
Near and dear to my lungs, mostly.
Matches the color of the dress.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about marijuana culture.
Smoking in LA.
Absolutely.
Smok-ing in LA. Well, we could start with just cannabis culture in general. Just its inception, where it came from, why it's so synonymous with LA culture. Where do you think that comes from?
I mean, we've got great weather, great growing conditions, and it just kind of really makes it easy to grow the product, have the product, smoke the product, enjoy the product. I mean, look at the day we're having today. It's overcast, but it's a beautiful day to smoke some cannabis.
You know, I really feel like California in general has been such a proponent for the legalization of marijuana, but I think we attribute the growing and cultivation of it with Northern California.
Right.
But out here, we were just trying to smoke it. Exactly. Just trying to get some to roll up and to smoke. And it's
a literal trickle-down effect, if you will.
But then, past the hippie culture, we enter into the 80s, and this really interesting thing happened by way of Reagan, where, we got criminalized to a really big degree.
Right. He decided crack was much better.
Yeah. This is very, very true. And so we want to discuss the feelings of being marijuana proponents in a time where there's such a big cultural boom of marijuana smoke, and also, marijuana smoking, and reflecting on the context of, people who were imprisoned and who's making money and who's building empires off of something that we've all enjoyed.
Right.
And maybe some cultures have promoted it to a better degree than others, but are they reaping the same benefits?
Oh, absolutely not. I think we know that there's quite a disproportionate amount of wealth and benefit from the cannabis industry. I believe you're watching a documentary, and Killer Mike had said something really profound about the cannabis industry.
Yeah, it was the Grass is Greener Netflix documentary. And Killer Mike spoke in regards to, everyone knows that the 90, I think somewhere between 98% of the people who are making top level money off the marijuana industry is disproportionately white. And he made, there's no incentives to have growers who are black or include distribution chains where people have access to that wealth. And if you compare that to the amount of people who were imprisoned under the criminalization of it, he goes on to say that if all that we got out of all this struggle is the ability to buy it without being criminalized, then we have really got the shit into the stick.
Yeah.
It's, 2 Chainz and Snoop Dogg are acceptable marijuana advocates and people to represent it, and they don't have the same villainization as people back in the day did.
Right.
It's just an interesting thing that there's no reprieve and there's really no justice for people who were harmed by something that has become such a popular thing. Like the weed civil rights movement definitely has its casualties, and we don't give them enough credit.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think we, as I think a community in LA, particularly the Black community in LA, what do you think that we can do kind of to forward our progress within the cannabis community here?
Well, I think good steps have been taken. There's, I believe it's called Gorilla RX over there on Crenshaw, like that Black woman-owned dispensary. I think steps in that direction, especially considering that the way Crenshaw Boulevard is being like heavily gentrified just because of the area.
Right.
To make that statement and to show that opportunity, like not all hood spots or spots in our neighborhoods have to be the janky places that are, raided and you go there the next day and it's not there because they're still, selling out of pill bottles.
Right. I miss those pill bottles so much. I think we were talking earlier about how I saved like 2 plastic Target bags full, thinking that I was going to do something creative.
I have 4 Crown Royal bags full of those pill bottles, thinking I was going to do some kind of project.
Yeah, that weed had me thinking that I was an artist, that I was going to sell millions of dollars worth of little pill bottle art to somebody somewhere.
The inspiration of unbranded weed.
Yes.
What a time to be alive.
It's like, I'm just going to trust that this is what you're telling me it is.
But we would be remiss to talk about like enjoying weed culture without also reflecting on, mental health culture at large in Los Angeles. Like,
right.
The homelessness is a big thing for us, and we just think about the mental health crisis here and how LA in particular, but how, California at large is trying to address it. And we have to think about the mental health ramifications of, marijuana use.
Right.
Are we a culture of, self-medicating and self-sabotaging? Are we consuming in a rate because it's popular and because I feel like weed is such a rite of passage and such like a LA thing that people participate like to a degree that may be excessive just because it's so synonymous with our culture.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's something that kind of started off as, medicinal and people really kind of needing it more so than, using it for recreation. I think that with anything, because like ketchup used to be used as medicine once upon a time. Cocaine used to be used as medicine once upon a time. And you see how crazy people have gotten with that. So I think that, not everyone, but a lot of people live in excess. So they've taken something that kind of started off as, medicine for a lot of people and just kind of went balls to the wall with it,
If I remember correctly, weed got legalized in California in 1996.
Right.
And they kind of softened it with the medicinal approach and the CBD and whatnot. But do you feel like the potency of the weed now is different than the potency of chronic? And,
yes, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I miss the pill bottle era of weed because whatever we're getting now, whatever this government sanctioned weed is that they're selling out there, I don't like it. Let's go back, because not only is it less potent than what I used to buy from, this dude named Corey that lived down the street, but it's like you've bred out all of the original strains. Like, I can't find Granddaddy Purp anywhere.
But you can find weed that tastes like a banana split, and that is why the legalization of it created like such a capitalistic thing. There's jars so pretty,
beautiful jars
that you can't
beautiful craftsmanship.
You can't reuse them.
Right.
You can't bring your lunch in them.
I can't put other weed in it.
I think that the younger people who are starting just definitely have a lot more exposure to it than we did, which is a good and bad thing. I like the freedom of choice. I like that you're able to do it because you choose to, but it's, start slow. You know what I'm saying? Start with the filter.
Yes, baby steps for sure.
Like, you don't see young folks with little pipes no more.
Oh my God.
They out there.
Little one hitters.
They out there with Philly blunts just.
Oh my goodness. They're throwing a whole 3.5 in the blunt now.
Listen.
It's just like, okay. All right. You got it, Chief. When did you start smoking?
On my 22nd birthday.
Okay.
And it's weed being such an important part of my life, I also reflect on the fact that it did get to a point where I can say that my usage was excessive. When I first started, I feel like I baby stepped into it. I started in a in a parking lot with a couple of my friends from a job that I had, and that morphed into really getting into it more. But it was framed around just like something social.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I didn't necessarily do it from a context of, it's like, like I'm a social drinker. I'm also a social smoker. But I do acknowledge at a point in my life, it got to the point where, like, there's a difference between wanting to smoke and needing to smoke.
Right.
Like, oh my God, I need to smoke before I cook. And I need to smoke before I eat. And I need to smoke after I eat. And I have to smoke before I fuck because I want it to feel better.
I feel seen a little bit.
I mean, it can definitely be a crush. It's we live in a time where true pleasures can be hard to really get. Like, life fulfillment, where you are on your psychosocial development, where hitting certain benchmarks don't necessarily happen for us. So we do happen to live in a place where joy is something that can be purchased in the form, or as a crutch, and I've reflected on
temporary
that.
joy.
Mm-hmm. And I went to therapy for it, actually. One of the first times I ever went to therapy, the person who referred me thought that... Now, shout out to Kaiser for trying to have a good behavioral health system in Southern California, but you failing in some ways. But I had a good person who told me, like, you kind of are self-aware of your problems and you acknowledge that you smoke a lot. Maybe you'd want to go to substance abuse counseling. It's the same framework as far as what you'll get in therapy, but addressing certain things. So I've had periods of sobriety where I've been able to reflect on usage and necessity. Like I've had a partner before who's a daily smoker, and that kind of influenced behavior. So then you think about addiction versus casual consumption. You reflect on that. So as I get older, number one, this new weed hit different. So it's like I don't want to waste my money and buy a $20 joint just for a nap. You know what I'm saying? Like I can get that on my own. I got a job. So I do like having the maturity and framework to understand there's a time and place for it. It makes some activities more enjoyable. It helps with some of your nerves and some of your actual conditions, but it shouldn't be the only thing that you're utilizing to subside that.
Absolutely not. It's like it's supplementary. It's like taking maca root or something, or eating what is it that all the kids are on now, the sea moss. Something to that effect.
How about yourself? How about your reflections on marijuana use, or just the impact of living in LA and your consumption?
I mean, I feel like weed is everywhere. I started smoking probably when I was like 16 or 17 as a social thing. Like, one of my homegirls was smoking, and she was just like, I'm going to teach you how to roll my blunts. And initially, I didn't realize that I was being used for my skills. Like, what? So she would have me sitting there gutting blunts and then like re-rolling the guts before I even touched the weed. And I was like, this feels like almost kind of like the training I went through for firearms. It was just very, very thorough. And I think that I started doing it because my parents always told me not to do it. So it was just like, well, you know that I'm going to do it now. So I started doing it. And initially, I wasn't crazy about it. It was just like, I'll take it or leave it. The feeling is cool, but I can't really see how people do this every day. And now you fast forward almost, 20 years later. And now I am somebody who smokes before cooking, not while cooking, because ew. But I'm a social smoker, but I also smoke by myself. I'll smoke whatever. Like, I have a vape pen. I'll smoke flower. Love edibles. So it's just kind of like I'm all over the place with it. But I think it's because I really appreciate the cannabis, not so much I'm doing it just to be stoned and just to be high. You know what I mean? There's, like you said, there's like a responsible usage there with it. So it may be excessive to some people anyway, but for me it works. So, I think that we are pretty much probably the cannabis capital of the country at this point.
I mean, I feel like Colorado got some competition.
Yeah, but Colorado kind of shifted. They're like on a shroom kick right now. So
they still got movie theaters that people smoke in, though.
They do. They do. We're not there yet. We had cannabis cafes that didn't really do too well because it was like, let me do this during COVID. Like,
When breathing is the number one thing you're not supposed to be able to do.
Right. And if you bring your own tips in, we're going to charge you for that. If you want to use our tips and get sick, there's no charge for that.
Tax dollars.
That just goes back to the disproportionate wealth within the industry. It's like, we see you. We're on to you.
Hey, you see the Barbie movie yet?
What do you mean yet? That's how I know you high. You think I'm about to go sit there and see a Barbie movie?
I thought the movie was really, really good. Albeit I was a little stoned when I watched it, but it was aesthetically pleasing. I thought that it had a really, really good context and commentary.
Okay, Barbie making political moves out here. I'm into it.
It spoke to a lot. I mean, and Issa Rae in it.
Yeah, I mean, are we on that tip, or we're just supporting people just because?
I think she got Barack Obama status. We voted for him because, we voted for him for a reason that's obvious.
Okay.
As a person from LA, if Issa Rae's in it, I'm gonna watch it.
Well, all right, Issa girl, then I'm gonna go buy my ticket tomorrow. I got you.
Yes.
Did you know, by the way, that the minimum buy-in for a dispensary in this fair city of ours is like $100,000?
Oh yes, the point of entry to make money, like in marijuana here in Los Angeles or California at whole is hard. Who has that capital?
Definitely not me. I'm sitting here in an Old Navy dress and some flip-flops, so it's not me.
And then if you consider the fact that it's hard to, depending on who you are, it's hard to get loans, it's hard to get that capital, it's hard to be financed for it, or there's very strict regulations on where you can get that money from and how it can be used. Then location, the rent and licensure and all that kind of stuff. It almost feels like that's a big barrier that's put there on purpose to keep certain people out.
So you're saying that robbery is the only way then to go about opening a dispensary in Los Angeles?
Pretty much. Either that or you got to be a robber baron. Like, you really got to have that mentality where, I mean, we know that long money comes from people who look like me and you don't have long money in Los Angeles like that, and that's a whole conversation. It's institutional. It's systemic. It's so many people sold grandma's house in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So you don't even have that wealth as far as property.
We got generational trauma, not generational wealth.
But we own that shit. I mean, there's a reason why Kendrick's our biggest star. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, it's such a. I like to look at it from a cultural standpoint, though. It's like you only see two things in your mind when you think about a person from California or from Los Angeles who smoke weed, and it's either like a person who's really into hip hop or a person who wears like a Baja sweater, like who maybe surfs or something like
so
that.
So Spicoli or Snoop Dogg are the only two references that we have.
100%. But on the same token, when you think about who's making money off of it, it's more of a person who has a more Huntington Beach vibe than an Inglewood vibe.
Oh, of course.
And it's a very annoying part. Like, if we only keep it in the context of smoking in LA, but just doing anything in LA comes at such a cost because, well, one, living in LA is such a luxury. Like, it's
existing in LA is a luxury.
100%. So, I can kind of understand why people are smoking because it's, what else are you gonna do? Like, how else can I amplify this activity to a degree where it's maximum enjoyment?
Exactly. Do you think that's why we see so many of these, I guess, like bootleg shops popping up, like in, for lack of a better term, illegal spaces? I went to a weed shop once. I won't say where, but I was there with my mom of all people, and they had a generator for electricity, but the generator was, I believe, inside the establishment. And so it's like the smell of gasoline is very pungent. So you can't even smell the weed at this point. You know, generator goes out and now you're trapped in this hot box with all of these people in the dark. And, you feel like you might die. But it's worth it because you heard that they got some fire-ass weed there.
And you're supporting black-owned
and
businesses.
You're supporting small black-owned business at the same time.
I've definitely been in some places that look like toddlers with the construction workers. But they're not as intimidating, or at least when this first started happening, going into some of the weed shops that look like Apple stores.
Oh my God.
Where you can put in your phone number on an iPad.
Right.
And get rewards points for buying a stizzy.
Yeah, I'm good on that. I don't want to belong to any rewards programs for doing something that I've been doing for 20 years. Like, y'all just got here. Don't start throwing all this technology and this sterility at me now.
Wait, so you still look for the run of the mill, like hole in the wall type places to buy it?
I mean, I look for them, but I look to send somebody else to go. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to be there again when one gets raided, or shut down. I don't want to be there if, it gets robbed, God forbid.
Yo, that happened to my homeboy Randy. Randy, very unsuspecting. He's not even Randy is my homeboy from Gardena. He is, I believe, I think his dad's white and his mom's Japanese Korean.
Okay.
So he ain't one of those like, he's such a straight laced dude, just like just a regular, your average, not even your average weed smoker, somebody who just watches it. I mean, who smokes it so they can watch The Godfather, like in peace. Like,
okay.
Real chill like that. So I remember he goes to a dispensary somewhere in Gardena, and this was a place where he would get his vape cartridges from. And the day that he went up in there was the day that spot got raided, and like the degree in which they treated people who work there and were in there, like it's criminal. You would think that they were in there doing Hannibal Lecter type of like experimentation and stuff on people. They came in there with weapons. Everyone got to get against the wall. Randy's stuff got confiscated. He got questioned for a very long time. Like what should have been a 15-minute weed run to get his cartridge turned into a 2-hour affair because this particular place, and I get the legal context of it, they weren't operating within the license because for some reason we voted for the legalization of it in a degree that didn't anticipate that once you legalize something, you then you then make it a part of capitalism.
Right.
And that system is known to pervert pretty much anything. Mm-hmm. Hence us going from something like the chronic being a cultural phenomenon to chronic now being such a casual part of,
right.
LA culture. To
like a pumpkin spice latte now.
Man, but to see someone who has his first police experience being just in a place that was local to him to go buy marijuana.
Yeah.
And you got like, dogs and guns.
And semi-automatic weapens and, damn near out in your SWAT gear, your Sunday best.
100%.
For a weed cartridge.
But it just speaks to... It's funny because you like to patronize those really fancy places by proxy, but I don't want to go to places that feel unsafe.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Especially when you get to a certain age where you don't want to rebel. You want to pay for a certain degree of convenience.
Exactly.
So does my local shop have my phone number on file and I get text messages every once in a while?
Yes. They do, yeah.
Yes, that happens. But I wouldn't say that it's... Sometimes you just roll with it. Every time that you log into anything, there's a certain amount of acceptance that you kind of give to the fact that society has moved to a point where you're being commodified.
There's just like a little exasperated sigh every time you sign up for something new. It's like a little part of you dies every time.
I got a little like annoyed the other day because I got my first weed coupon in the mail. Like it was a new dispensary that opened up somewhere in my neighborhood, and it gave me like a little good money behind it too. It came on like on plastic like card. Like,
the good card, the plastic card stuff.
Like you could punch out the coupons because it's pre-scored. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
We used to buy weed word of mouth on a good spot, and now it's being directly advertised to my junk mail, right between the Wiener Schnitzel coupons. And I feel like those was put together for a reason.
Right, look at God.
I ain't paying full price for no chili cheese fries.
I remember we used to get weed delivered, but not the way that we do now. Because like I love a good weed delivery now, but before, again, shout out to Corey. But he had hours like the cable guy. So it was like, I'll be at your house sometime between 12 and 8, maybe. And it's like, you would see him driving through the neighborhood. So it's like, he's around. And it's like, wait a minute, did you forget about me? It's like, no, I just got stops before you. But I'm right here.
You gotta applaud this young man for logistics, though. He's honoring he's honoring the order of calls. Not necessarily the most efficient. I'll be honest, I was one of those people who took advantage of the weed deliveries when they got really popular, especially during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Like they was coming through with the square readers and whatnot if you didn't have cash. It's
they take it from your bank account, like straight from your bank account now. And a lot of them are taking major credit cards.
Everything about who I am makes me annoyed to say this, but I do appreciate the fact that there's a convenience factor added towards, added to the consumption and the purchase of marijuana. It's, the taxis are not as prominent because of Lyft and Uber.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and even that is being offset by the small trips you can take on these scooters. Like, industries will evolve.
Yeah.
But to see what the weed industry has evolved to, again, it's your biggest stars and proponents are people who look like us. I mean, say for your Cheech and Chongs and your Willie Nelsons and
the different era, the kind of inaugural era of recreational marijuana use.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg is a household name right now. Your grandmama knows who Snoop Dogg is.
Martha Stewart wanted to do a show with Snoop Dogg because he is just like the face of cannabis use, pretty much everywhere. Not just here, not just in LA, no, but everywhere. Even places where marijuana smoking isn't legal.
That's true. I think I saw him in the Top Ramen commercial, like high as hell with them glasses on. Accepted though.
Exactly. What is your favorite way to consume cannabis? Are you strictly a smoker, or do you like edibles?
I'm strictly a smoker. I have had good experiences in my 20s with edibles, but that's usually when you're looking for more bang for your buck. Mm-hmm. Like you trying to go to this concert and be mad faded, or I went on a 4-year Coachella run where getting what you want is hard. Getting what you want into the festival is difficult, so maybe you'll consume something before just to kind of have a residual high. But I do prefer smoking. I don't know if we're at a point now where smoking weed has the same level of connoisseurship as smoking cigars, if you will. And I like to say that it does. I've gotten to the really spoiled part of my life where I don't even roll it anymore. I just buy pre-rolls.
Excuse me.
Well, there used to be an art to it, and even a point of pride being able to know how to roll your own stuff up. Mm-hmm. But I'm really into those infused joints.
Yeah, I feel you. It's definitely easier to buy those than it is to try to make your own. And I've tried, and yes, to no avail. So if you want to get all crazy with those infused joints and put the hash and then roll it around in the keef and then bless it with the blood of Jesus and then light it on fire with a Viking flame from a dragon's butt, yeah, sure, but
it's just a ritual, It's do you still enjoy, like, whenever I'm with you, I'm enjoying a blunt because
always.
You've rolled a blunt. I think that you have a more you have a more hands-on approach towards your consumption. But outside of rolling, what is your preferred method? Like, are you an edible person?
I love edibles. Okay. How much time do we have left to talk about my love for edibles? I thought that, I was just going to be strictly flower forever. But I think that my foray into edibles had been so good that it was just like, I can't not do edibles now. I think I like that prolonged feeling. I think I like the autonomy to kind of like taper your high. I love beverages. Infused beverages are probably my favorite type of edible, if you will. The gummies are cool and all that fun stuff. But like those cannabis lemonades, man, they be hitting. Like, oh my God.
What's your preferred milligram count for them?
Okay, so there was a Venice Cookie Company made this lemonade, and it was about the size of like a Calypso bottle. Okay. And so I would do maybe like a third of that and then get like a venti passion fruit iced tea from Starbucks.
Oh, okay.
Pour that in there, and then that would get me good for like most of the day. And that was probably about between like 30, 45 milligrams. I think for edibles, 60 is my max before I'm just like...
I don't like taking a chance on edibles. I've also had very intense experiences with edibles, and I like to get high. Mm-hmm. I can admit that I like to get high, but I like to get high on my terms and not knowing the depths of myself in a way that I wasn't prepared for.
Right.
I went to this motherfucker for enjoyment. Now I'm in transcendence. Like, these are two completely different things I'm looking for. I'm also, and this may be telling on myself, but I'm also a very, I want it now type of person. Like, if I want it, I want it now.
I want that
high. Easy, quick to the bloodstream.
To my veins.
You know what I'm saying? And you get that fastest.
Yeah.
I think you get it fastest with smoking, but you get it longest with edibles.
Right.
Like, that shit lasts.
Yeah.
But you gotta do the dosage. I remember one time, I think that me and an old partner of mine, I think that someone almost died off of edibles.
I believe it.
Yes, it was years ago. This is when edibles kind of first started hitting the scene, and there was this one bar. It was called the 420 bar, and it was called the 420 bar because I think it had like 420 milligrams of
THC. Yep.
Right. And so it was
heavy hitter.
And it was New Year's Eve, and my girlfriend at the time had somebody coming from out of town. And so, you got somebody coming out, you want to show them around.
Right, show them a good time.
Now, sometimes you get on a flight and breathe in that air and blah, blah, blah. You start having your little allergies and blah, blah, blah. So she wasn't feeling like smoking. So we was like, we're going to recommend that you get this 420 bar. Like, it'll hit before we go out. We about to go downtown. We about to whoop-de-whoop. It's about to be the business. So we remember throughout the day, let's say we picked her up from the airport, throughout the day, she's eating on this 420 bar. So before it's time for us to go out, I say around 7 o'clock, she consumed, if not all of it, then maybe like 6 of the 8 squares. So I can't do quick math. Whatever 75% of 420 is, she had that. So
that's a lot of milligrams.
She had a lot of milligrams. That's definitely when we found out that THC poisoning is a thing.
Yes.
So my girlfriend at the time and her were in there getting ready or dressed, and my girlfriend calls me in there. This young lady threw up all over our bed. And so we kind of had to put her somewhere where she can clean off decently. So we put her in the tub, and she passed out. Mm-hmm. Now, we're sitting there in a situation where, and this is a really interesting place to be in, because even though weed is legal, it's stigmatized.
Right.
And even though it's medicinal, we're using it recreationally. So we have somebody who is in our bathtub, apparently about to, or just in and out. We'll say she was in and out, and we don't necessarily know how to go about it. There was points where we would go in, we would check on her. She would come in, she would meet us, at least in gaze, and then she would fall back out. And there was one time when I went to go check on her. She, hey, you doing okay? Talking to her, trying to get her to come to. And I remember she looked at me. She looked me deep in my eyes, and it was like a really, like, one of those, like, when the end of Benjamin Button. When the 92-year-old newborn is looking at them with a sense of knowingness. To any end, she ended up being okay the next morning. That's one of those things you got to sleep off.
Yeah.
And she talked about being completely present during even the points where she was passing out, where she can hear everything, but being stuck in her own body. And she said that point where she grabbed me and we were looking in each other's eyes, she said that she was trying to communicate to me from where she was that she needed me to call her mom and tell her mom that she loved her. And it's January 1st. It's the next day. We didn't do anything. It's a lot quieter outside. This person then moves on with the rest of their trip because they have other people to visit.
Right.
And the first thing me and my then partner thought about was like, yo, we need to get one of those bars. Like, we wanted to have that kind of a trip.
It's like, I'll have what she's having.
Mm-hmm. But we also want to take a moment to, talk about the self-medicating versus, self-sabotaging.
Right. I mean, I feel like For me, I started, because I think as with a lot of Black parents in the 80s and 90s, it was kind of like taboo to have any kind of like mental irregularities, any mental health issues like ADHD or being autistic or having some sort of concentration defect, anything like that was just like, oh no, not my kid. So I think kind of growing up and struggling, I was really bright in school. I just had trouble focusing on stuff. And so when I got to high school, it was just kind of like, well, let me see if this kind of helps calm me down or, help me focus or take the edge off of what I had at that point, anxiety. And it kind of worked. It did what I needed it to do. But then kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, about smoking in excess, it kind of got to a point where it was like, now I'm just doing it, I think, the way that people smoke cigarettes almost, where it's just kind of habit and not necessarily because I'm enjoying this thing anymore. Not that I don't enjoy it, but it was kind of like, okay, well, do we still need to be doing this or doing it as frequently anymore?
I feel you.
Especially when you know that, or if you know that you're not functioning anymore on it,
I remember one time in therapy, my therapist asked me. This was a very a sobering moment because it was it was one of those. How sometimes you don't think about something until you're asked that question, and then it's on your mind. They asked me, or she asked me, "What are your dreams like?" And that's when I realized that I don't dream. Or at least at that time, I didn't dream. And that's because people who are heavy marijuana smokers, it messes up a certain rhythm within their minds, and you don't get deep enough sleep in order to get to the point where you dream. And that was a scary question to be asked because it's like, outside of the physical aspect of dreaming, like, then where am I processing things? Where am I having that mental space to really get through things? And that's when I realized that weed can be, or the consumption of marijuana in many forms can be used to mask that level of, not being able to process things. A lot of people are out there smoking weed before, especially when people were smoking it and went to go do violent acts or things like that, or would get high off anything to go commit violent acts. It's if you need something to cope with the necessity of your situation or your reality, that thing definitely needs to be reflected upon and reassessed.
Absolutely.
Especially thinking about how that showed up in my life. There were things that, there was a personality, if you will, in my 20s when I was very jovial and fun-timed and not really taking things as serious. And it's the same kind of personality you would expect from like a town drunk, or
right.
If I create a personality around, if I Wiz Khalifa myself, then it becomes a personality, and you'll never ask me, am I consuming too much to mask this, that, and the third,
right?
That I'm masking this, that, and the third, or that I'm moving in such a way where I'm not facing issues that I'm truly having.
Right. So now it's like, face your demons before you roll the blunt.
Or purchase a pre-roll.
Or purchase the pre-roll, whichever you prefer. Or pop that edible, or bake yourself some cookies, whatever have you. But yeah, get to the root of your issues and then use the weed to help you after you release all of that shit. Because I think that self-reflection and getting to, the core of what ails you, essentially, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard, grueling work. And I think that rewarding yourself with a pre-roll is not a bad idea. So has there ever been a time where the marijuana has let you down?
Oh yes, I've bought mid. I've bought weed at places, back in the pill bottle days, where it was advertised as a sativa, but they was just telling you the same thing. Just, you might smell it and think that you know what you're talking about, but There was the year that Wu-Tang Clan was at Coachella. Me and my then partner we got faded before and then slept through the performance. So it's one of the pluses of all this heavily branded transplant loving weed is that it's, you know, it has everything on the packaging. You got it down to the science, lets you know the cannabinoids and the split.
All of that nonsense. It's like looking at a nutritional label on a Cliff Bar now because, but I think that, you know, like you said, people who are not from here, that's kind of what they gravitate towards. They go for like the fancy packaging and the glass bottles and the, you know, the pizzazz of it all. They don't really care about what's actually in the jar. You know, I think that when you either have been here for a long time or you're from here, you know here, there's a difference in the weed connoisseur level, I would say.
You know, not only is there a difference between the weed connoisseurship, but also there's a difference in the aesthetic of smoking.
Oh yeah.
Like I feel like transplants are a little bit more brazen with smoking in public, but it's more of a statement. Like you buy into the aesthetic of LA counterculture. You just went to MedMen, or you just went to a place that was...
You're on Melrose somewhere.
You bought your weed on Melrose just to look like you're smoking it on Crenshaw. And that's your thing, I get it. Or, you know, you have your vape pen, the one that produces like heavy smoke and whatnot, and you may or may not be a lip gymnast where you can make it do tricks. But I think people who grew up in LA or just have that true native culture when it comes to smoking, it's a thing to do, not a thing to perform.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like when you light up you can always tell who is a native smoking versus who is a transplant smoking by their energy lighting up at a concert. Because if you're from here, you just gonna do it.
Right.
Because you know they're not gonna do nothing. But it's still taboo to a transplant. They don't know the rules yet.
Looking around like you about to pull a crack rock out your bag or something. Yeah. It's just like
you just wait until the headliner come on, and then there's really no rules unless you're at the Novo. They don't play that. Yeah. The Novo does not play that.
Do not light up at the Novo.
Don't
please.
even vape at the Novo.
Don't even think about it at the Novo. Maybe in the parking lot, but leave it all in the car, please.
But yeah, I guess my consumption feels like transplant consumption because I gravitate towards the capitalistic places, the actual institutions and stores.
Right.
But also, I'm a convenience person. I'm tired of forming relationships with somebody at a dispensary that gets closed and I never see them again.
Exactly.
Versus
and they sell your phone number to another dispensary somewhere else, and now it's just like you hopping from place to place.
Versus having my purchase history right there in the iPad. Well, like, yo, what did I get last week, Samantha? Oh yes, it was
that raspberry schmeckle or whatever you guys are calling it.
What I'll never do is that I'll never wear the clothes for if I like Stizzy, cool, I'll have Stizzy, but I'm not rocking a sweater. That's transplant shit. I'm not doing that. Unless show me actually there's one brand that I would probably wear their gear, and that's I think it's like Farmers and Felons or something like that. Like they actually are trying to put money towards getting people out of jail. Like I don't like my weed money going towards giving
capitalism.
Getting healthcare for somebody up in Northern California who chooses to grow weed because he's rebelling against Daddy's trust fund. You know what I'm saying?
Well, all the different ways we like to get high. I'm glad that we found a way to come together to discuss smoking in LA. This has been our inaugural episode of Native LA's ING in LA. I've been E from Inglewood. This has been Tony from Compton, technically.
Yeah, born and raised in Compton, bounced around, but Compton was home.
Compton born and mostly bred, so
up until I was 16.
We'll take it. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Peace.